Mm, Good morning, or wherever you are. Yeah, good morning. Here, I'm in St. Louis. Good afternoon. Um, Welcome. Folks, we have, this is a day that's been a long time in the making in a lot of ways. We have a very special guest with us today. And we'll cut to Karen in a moment. But to set us up here, the discussion today is around the patient perspective. um, the patient being Karen Hewitt. And we're going to kind of dive into, like we talk here a lot at Mental Health, there's this sort of the ideas and the planning, the preparation, the concepts around mortality or illness, etc. And that's important stuff. It's fascinating stuff too. And then there's the actual living it. And those two things can be subtly and strikingly different. So uh, we are finally, in having a conversation here a little bit publicly that's been going on in the background. Karen Hewitt is, I don't know what to say. I mean, the adjective list for Karen and how important she has been, how important you have been to Mettle in our early days and our formation and this sort of burgeoning sense of community and us getting to feel like we're doing something that feels right is thanks so much to you, Karen. You have been an invaluable part of our community in all kinds of ways, and we just can't thank you enough. So I'm so happy you're here with us today. And we'll get jump in here in a moment. Well, let me just say a reminder for folks who've been here before. The way our webinars work is Karen and I, we're going to go through some slides and just sort of set the table a little bit. But the fun comes from really the conversation with you all in the audience, questions, dialogue, sharing stories, whatever it is. Just a reminder, there are no big rules here. It's meant to be a safe place to be a little bit raw. So tears are welcome, anger is welcome, feelings are welcome. Just the only ethos here is we ask for basic kindness and respect for others and yourself. So with that, let's also kind of cut over to Sonia real quick to remind us how to engage. Uh, Sonia, you there?
Thanks, BJ. Thanks everyone for being here with us. And like BJ said, he and Karen are going to go through some slides. And then after they do that, there's two ways that you can interact with them. You can raise your hand and we will unmute you and you can speak with both of them. And if you'd prefer to not do that and you just want to type it in, you can click on the Q&A button, type in your question, and I will ask it aloud to them to answer. So two modes after they get through the slides. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Sonia. All right. Well, Karen, welcome. Very happy for today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
So yeah, I mean, let's just jump into something really meaty together, identity, who am I in this, how our
Yeah.
sense of self moves with time or doesn't.
Mm.
So can you
Well,
share with us a little bit of your experience here?
yeah, and BJ and Sonia, it's my honor to be here.
Mm.
I'll I'll just dispel my nerves and as you say, jump in. Um, my identity is a mashup now, I think. I never until April of 2021 had a bad illness, and to receive a diagnosis of lung cancer, which I now know a diagnosis is not a medical emergency, but it felt like I was standing on a trapdoor, like in a cartoon, and the trapdoor opens and whoosh, down you go. So right away, I think mortality was front and center. And
Mm.
I just had the idea, I'm going to die. Um, and I was in tears, and it was very difficult. But uh, I didn't have a lot of time to do much but follow oncology, follow the cancer diagnosis, and my identity very quickly became tangled up with treatment. And I remember my initial chemotherapy, 6 hours, and I had a fabulous infusion nurse, and she coached me through the whole thing. And fortunately, I was sent home with something in writing, but things you don't think about, like putting the toilet seat down, flushing twice. I couldn't change litter boxes. Steve and I used separate hand towels in the kitchen, masking constantly. And we still were in an overlapping period with COVID. So there was a lot to it. And my white cell count was paramount. I had to track that. No lovemaking. It was dangerous. And to connect up the drugs that are life-saving with how they impede one's life, one's routines, intimacy, it was tough. And then there was the interchange in identity, which for me was femininity, so much about love, family, friendships. And that identity was so precious to me. And I really feel I lost control over that. I didn't want to announce to everyone I have advanced lung cancer. And I also originally, I had the idea that I would be the same. I would be Karen Hewitt Randall. I would live my life, and treatment would just be an inconvenience. And I would go about my days, and really not much would change. And of course, that's baloney. I just collapsed into the total patient. My husband, Steve, is fabulous. And I might get ahead of the story, but particularly when I was having chemotherapy and radiation, 6 weeks, Monday through Friday. And somehow at the very beginning of radiation, I was asked, are early morning appointments okay? And I said, sure, we're early risers, it should be fine. Well, they get going at Dartmouth Cancer at 7 a.m. So we got a routine, 5:30, 6, we're up, heading to the hospital, and it was grinding. And I think it was then that I understood just how sick I was. But I'll kind of stop there on identity. I look back and I think I was healthy, I got sick. And what I say now, if I were meeting someone and cancer came up, I would say, I am a healthy lung cancer patient. I put it together.
How long, Karen, well, let me rephrase that. It's not as though my sense is you're work in progress. This experience is ongoing. This is, like you'd noted earlier, you used to think that you were sort of, I'm Karen Hewitt. I am, these things are happening to me. I'm sort of a fixed thing. And then you came to realize if I'm hearing you right, were in evolution yourself. You were changing in all sorts of ways. Your sense of self was changing in all sorts of ways. And so let me just ask, I'm assuming that's an ongoing process, but is that how you see it too? Or do you feel like you've arrived at this new place? Okay.
It's ongoing. It's very much flow. And I can say I've always lived my life that way somewhat. It's always, my life has been dynamic. It has not been static, which is not to say I've had this exciting, highs and lows. I've been stable, but I've always been open to experience and trying to understand or extract meaning. And that sounds so ephemeral, but really it just comes down to the way events come up in my life, whether they're connected up with friends or family or I noticed something. I think COVID was a huge, just an extraordinary intrusion into our entire national consciousness. And then personally, it just felt that, I was afraid, very afraid of getting COVID, and then began to get more comfortable. But that segue from COVID to cancer and fast forward to today, it's been changing. It's been ever changing. Treatment, particularly. Sure.
Wonderful. And did you, well, one thing before I forget, I just want to, for some of the folks in the audience, they may not appreciate what you mean when you say about flushing the toilet twice or closing the lid.
Oh,
Can you just help us understand the sort of significance of that
of
statement?
course.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
I think everyone should know this. I was receiving chemotherapy. The drug was called carboplatin, quite toxic, not as toxic as cisplatin. So I would have chemotherapy every 2 weeks, which is highly toxic, which made it important for me to practice hygiene regimen that I wash hands, of course. I shower daily, but with that chemotherapy drugs in your system, well, lovemaking was not something that was safe to do. And tracking white cell count, I finally had a conversation with my oncology nurse, who is fabulous. I could talk with her about anything, or with my oncologist, Dr. Cascade Shrai. But I talked with Catherine, and she just cleared it up for me that we didn't want to be transmitting carboplatin to Steve through fluids. And the same notion, I think, was connected up to getting, when I was passing carboplatin out of my system or peeing, that's direct, that we needed to be safe about making sure that that wouldn't expose someone else, whether Steve, a guest, whomever. So that's probably too much information, but
Oh, it's so super helpful. Let's get granular here. And there's so much to talk about. You're bringing up so many issues already. So we'll move off this slide in a second, but this will be a thread, I think, throughout our conversation. But I guess I just want to make the point, that's so helpful to hear sort of the nature of how to manage toxicity. But I think what you're also helping us feel is what does it, your sense of self when you are toxic, when you are sort of need some barrier from the world around you. I'm assuming under this rubric of identity that is a pretty tricky message to take in. I don't know.
it
I don't
was,
want to
and
project.
well, it was tricky. And actually, BJ, you're triggering for me. I think one of the first Mettle webinars I listened to, it's kind of blurry, but I bet it was on palliative care. And I had had the experience of testing what I thought was a palliative care site that Dartmouth Cancer had. I thought it was for patients and caregivers. It turned out it was only for caregivers, so that when I logged in, I had to be already dead in order for Steve to be a beneficiary of what was on this website. So in your webinar, I did speak. I can't believe I did, but I said I felt like Steve and I had been separated. He was in one corner, I was in the other corner. I didn't understand yet how to create that bridge back to each other. Cancer severed that thread between us, and then it just had to be reknit somehow. So yeah, it was very difficult.
Yeah, I bet now. And remind me, you said it already, it was diagnosis 2021?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Right. Right. Okay, my friend. Well, shall we let's see here? What's waiting for us around the corner? Um, oh, this one's I know this is an
Mm.
important concept here. Maybe a real quick to sort of I'll just say and please jump in here too. Obviously, Karen, you know this is an important statement to both of us. And one of the things I meant when I said at the beginning of this conversation about a long time in the making, well, in part because this is a thread that a woman named Leah Barrett and I and others had shared. And Leah was very important, is memory. She is a very important part of the Mettle community too. Um, Maybe Brian's on the webinar too. I hope so. But Leah taught us a lot of things, including helping us appreciate. In fact, just before her death, she was going to do a webinar with us on much the same idea of this sort of the the realities of dying versus sort of the ideas of dying. So anyway, I just want to reference our friend Leah here, and before I cut to you. But yeah, help us understand what Leah pointed you to in your own breakthrough here that's embodied in this slide.
Leah Barrett is incredibly important to me, and she is embedded in me, and she's beautiful. And I became determined to find out what, I mean, all I could do was investigate, but I wanted to understand what she may have said when it hit me that the reason the webinar was canceled that Leah was going to do was because she died the day before. And for some reason that stayed with me. I say for some reason, because my notion of mortality is it's with me on a daily basis. And I just thought, well, what might she have said? So I listened to a few of her podcasts, to her last podcast, and I think her last words may have in that podcast may have been good luck. I don't quite remember, but she I'm pretty sure she would have said there is a difference, that dying in the abstract is how we keep death at arm's length. And that is what led me to come up with the idea of we've got a mortality firewall. And there's a point at which, for me, I think it was at diagnosis. I can't presume to know when it happened for Leah. She was a psychotherapist and pretty savvy. So I think for her, she had a very good command of what mortality meant to her. But the mortality firewall, normal people, or I should say people who are not living with serious illness, have their mortality firewalls intact. When one gets a diagnosis, lung cancer, breast cancer, all of the horrible cancers, it could be cardiac, whatever your diagnosis is of serious illness, the mortality firewall comes down. And there you are across from, in my case, across from my oncologist. And I'm now, I step over the rubble of the firewall, and now I am dying instead of living. And it's okay, but I need to understand it, that I am going to be dying, and it may take months, I could add years, but my perspective is different. There's a saying, something like, it's not the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning. And that meant something to me, that I had always thought I would have endless beginnings. I'm a healthy person. I can always do what I want to do. But lung cancer, I now know I need to live intentionally. I don't have beginnings, so to speak. I could create one if I really needed to, but I am living differently. I think Viktor Frankl he's one of my North Stars, but one of the things he said is something like, live as if you are living for the second time and be intentional about making a decision. You can make it differently. But if we live as though we're living for a second time, and I'm certainly paraphrasing, I am more thoughtful about even how I may speak with a friend, what I choose to do with my time, and who is traveling with me, so to speak. Who knows I am dying when I take walks? I have about 5, maybe 6, 7 people who really are intimate with my story. Even it's a light story now, but yeah,
How do you mean that, Karen? How do you mean a light story?
that humor is very important.
Mm.
I think I think there is a kind of absurdity in our culture that we think we're not going to die. So it's not an aha moment that, oh, you've got a diagnosis. We have precious human birth, we have old age and sickness and death. And I should speak always for myself. I think I lived in that infinite phase of I'm healthy, I can do whatever I want to. I'm living a wonderful life in retirement with my husband, Steve. We were duplicate bridge players, tournament players, not professional, but we traveled and that was our passion. COVID hit, bridge stopped, and then cancer. And I never returned to it. I don't miss it, but that was a huge part of my identity, Steve's identity, together with me. But dying while living, it literally is more important to me. I'm on at Dartmouth Cancer Center. I will tangentially talk about it with friends now. Yesterday, I had a bronchoscopy, which was under general anesthesia, and here I am with a fat lip and a sore throat. But this is perhaps, it illustrates why I'm aware I'm dying and living secondarily, and that's great. But I have an appreciation if I am able to get in my garden this summer, if I can make the family dump runs, which is my job, that I can do this because I have life extending treatment from an accredited cancer center at Dartmouth Cancer. So it's a necessary perspective. Dying first, living second.
That resonates. Some of you guys may know that before Sonia and I got going with Mettle, we were trying to start a little library called the Center for Dying and Living. And we put the dying first for these very same reasons. Really? And yeah, that's the CDL. That's right. So, and I have an opinion on this, but I want to make sure I'm not speaking for you here, Karen. In some ways, these lessons are very hard earned. You get this diagnosis moment, and you turn this corner. Do you wish, I also hear that it's not just an adaptive response for you, Karen, but a generative one, a creative one, maybe even a playful one. Not always easy, but I'm wondering, I just want to be clear, is this a realization that would have been helpful to realize earlier in life? Or is it sort of a consolation prize that, well, since I have to go through this illness and death thing, in other words, this is a lesson that is a very welcome one that has been generative for you, or more of a sort of a second place. Like, I wish it were otherwise, but I got this.
Oh, BJ,
that makes sense?
It is, yeah, and it is so welcome. It is so welcome. I think I worked in hospice for 2 years, in the Boston area in a home hospice. And when I received my diagnosis, and I had a referral, an early referral for palliative care, and I said, no, not for me. Dr. Schrei, he just would keep bringing it up. And I since have learned he is double board certified in oncology and in palliative care. And I don't want to digress from your actual question, but if earlier in life, the earlier the better, if one can get going on saying, mortality, this will apply to me, this does apply to me. And it would have helped me, I think, have a better grounding when I see the slide says living in negative space. And what I mean by that is that dying while living and living in negative space, they're related to me in that in the same way we stand before a work of art in a museum and we see the paint that's stuck on the canvas, but you or me or anyone before a painting, we're going to decide on our own, right, what that means, whether we think it's beautiful or whatever our response is. And living in negative space is like that now for me. It's not that my lung cancer is my secret, but it's like, I'm going to see what surrounds whatever's going on with me, whether it's an interaction with a friend. I do have a few walking buddies, and I don't push it anymore. I don't try to lead a conversation. I just kind of look to see what's going to unfold. But I can't say I require it of others, but I look for it from others, that I just want to present myself as I am, and just see what the meaning is in the interaction. I don't need to label it. It's often more of a feeling. I don't know if this makes any sense at all, but just really relaxing into all of that space that's in our lives, or letting people in or not, and the choices we make, and yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. It does make a lot of sense. And this idea of spaciousness around when the firewall comes down, it can feel a constriction, a crowding, a smothering. I don't know, we can find our own words. So this notion of finding spaciousness is deep, from what I hear, that is deeply therapeutic. And it allows for you to relax into it on some level.
It really does. Yeah. And I think the humor, I come from a family that I mean, we kind of like gallows humor, and I need to be a little careful of it, but the notion of time, my nephew is getting married on June 1st, and I got a save the date card, and now I've got the RSVP. So it's on the fridge, and I've got a few weeks, and I'm thinking, how do I want to do this? Am I just going to pretend that I don't know. I have to hold expectations loosely. That's another Mettle webinar. But my sister asked me what I thought I might wear to the wedding. And I said, Jan, I'm thinking a nice shroud. And she took it in and she laughed. But I know that connected to that, I was told in April of 2021 that I would have 18 months to 3 years to live. So I hope I can, outperform the metrics and all of that. But it's a real consideration. And I'm kind of sad because part of it's selfish. It's like, I really don't want to go to what should be a joyful occasion and be the auntie with lung cancer, who's sitting at the table for the duration. So that's the kind of choice where I would have to have an honest conversation. and with my nephew and his fiance, and say, I'm going to pass on the wedding because I love you both so, so much. And then, I mean, I don't know if anyone can understand that feels so, so selfish, and yet it takes the pressure off. So I can be dying while living. Maybe that's one example that feels kind of real to me.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Karen. Is it a fair statement? I think I know the answer, but is it a fair statement as you're describing? It's not always a happy truth, but has this process that you're in the midst of increased your capacity for honesty or an increased willingness to live with truth or something like that, or an ability to, is your relationship to truth and honesty shifted?
Definitely. Truth, honesty, meaning, knowledge, they're a cohort. But truth it's so basic. The truth of death. I think the truth, we're not good at it when we're talking about death and dying. And I have asked friends what they think the opposite of death is, and most of them will say life. And I don't do it to be an aha investigator, but the opposite of death is birth. It's not life. Dying is perfectly natural. And I think that I'm working hard to internalize that. So that is truth. That is true. And the world was here before I was born into it. And when I die and leave it, the world will still be here. And I think that speaks to a kind of humility. And BJ, believe me, I have good days and bad days when I feel very natural and very almost embraced by the notion of death, that it really will be fine. I just want to quickly add, if I can be quick, that at the beginning of my diagnosis, I thought, gee, I should get some extra tools to try to deal with this. So I signed up for Mass General Hospital's John Kabat-Zinn mindfulness-based stress reduction course. And it was intensive. It's an 8-week commitment, daily meditation. In the group I was in, the facilitator, she was not Buddhist, she had Buddhist tendencies, but it took me to a path. So I am a Buddhist. I took vows. I am studying, but I bring this up to. I just think it's important, or maybe not. I certainly I've been Unitarian. I've been a Protestant, but for me, I have found it helpful. I won't say important, but helpful to have an understanding of what I think may happen when I die. So this is the truth of death. And yeah, I wish I had been working on it harder than I have throughout my life.
It's wild to think how this thing that is taking your life is giving you things too. And it feels like to spend too much time on either end of that without including the other seems a little bit risky. And I think I hear you connecting these dots of living and dying in real time. That statement you made, that notion, that speaking of truth, that just undeniable truth that the world predates you and will postdate you. This life precedes you and postcedes you, includes you. I've had various emotional responses to that truth. Sometimes it's felt offensive when I'm a little bit wrapped up in myself. And sometimes it feels so increasingly, maybe over life, it seems like such a relief to know that this life precedes and postcedes me. That's good news, or feels right. Do you have a similar experience? Is that what, I guess the question is, what's been the emotional, what are the feelings that go with realizing that truth for you?
Ah, that's a hard one, BJ. Because my gut response is, you know what? Death is fair. It's fair.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
exact. I am not terminally unique. I am, it almost, when I had the diagnosis, it was like, how can this be happening? Not me. And then kind of fast forward or slow walk it. Now I'm thinking, well, of course I have a story of illness. This is not a big deal. And I think that's what's so hard. It's such a hard sell for family and friends, and it's a hard concept to hang on to. This is completely fair. And how I manage it is up to me. And I am blessed. I have just a fantastic care team. Um, we haven't talked much about the mechanics of finding the right medical
Mm.
setting, but
Mm.
I know I have been privileged and I have benefited from fantastic medical care. But no matter how I look at it, death is fair. I have not
Mm.
been dealt a bad hand. I really haven't.
Mm. Oh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot in here. So much, but I should probably could keep us going a little bit. I
Oh
know
yeah.
there's more to come. Oh golly, Karen, it's so beautiful talking to you. Hold on here. Well, we've touched on meaning, but we can't say enough about it. I think I'll just say, to get us started on this one, I remember, and as a palliative care clinician, as a good, I tried to be a good palliative care doc. I sort of absorbed that the focus really was comfort. Um, but kind of pretty quickly that became a little saccharine. A comfortable life isn't necessarily such a great life. I just empirically just witnessed that, and I'm aware of, in my own experience, how powerful and generative the discomfort has been. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but just say the arrival for me, my own sort of understanding or the way I play in this field is, yeah, comfort's great, where it can be honestly had. Um, but in terms of if we need a goal, the goal of meaning maybe, or the compulsion to find or make meaning seems to be a much more powerful and life-giving force than, say, comfort. Anyway, that's one way into this big subject. I've heard you say, Karen, you've had a relationship with existentialism, with meaning, the notion of meaning, with Viktor Frankl for a long, long time. But how is this the importance of meaning in your life? The meaning of meaning, how is it evolving for you?
Boy, I am with you on that. I now know I would sacrifice comfort every time to extract the meaning for the kind of, I don't know why, it's a kind of edginess that
Mm.
I think of talk about comfort. Viktor Frankl coming out of Auschwitz and then
Mm.
establishing his school of psychotherapy, but again, to bring it into a contemporary place, um, the distinction between pain and suffering, I I think I can deal with the pain, and I don't have to suffer. Now, I say that, and I need to be careful because I will feel your pain. I will feel Steve's pain. I will, and Steve would probably say, "Oh my God, she just whines all the time about this chronic pain under her lung." And but that's not even it. The yeah, the kind of palliative care, my fear of palliative care is that I would get into a kind of Pollyanna, or I am not a relentlessly perky person. The biggest value so far with palliative care with Matt Wilson is my palliative care doc, is that that is a place I can go and rant and whine, and I can do a little of the why me, and I also can hash out what it is that how meaning is constructed. And even though I say I want it to be edgy and I want it to be, it doesn't need to be comfortable, this will sound like the ultimate platitude, but it does come down to love. It just comes down to love. For me,
I'm with you,
yes,
sister. Yeah.
it's not a big mystery. And
But I'd
the
also, oh, sorry, Karen, interrupt you. I was just to say, and you're not, that's not, I'm here, not a Pollyanna love, not like a tola kind of, oh, is everything so easy peasy? Not a super
right.
sweet notion of love, but a much more honest, rich, full version of love. I just want to point out that, so it's not a platitude in that Pollyannish way. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you. It seems important.
Oh, I just I'm going into one of my flights here, but the recent again webinar, BJ, on I can't even remember the exact topic, but Carl synchronicity. Carl Jung got in there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, well, forgive me, but I pulled the quote because it was so important to me. On the slide, Carl Jung and synchronicity, defined as the occurrence of events that have no apparent cause and effect relation, but are nonetheless connected by meaning, often in profound ways. And that was the slide, and I love that. I just love it. But you know what? He doesn't define meaning. He just, it's like, boom, meaning. It's not something you can write a thesis on. You don't need to. You can, maybe make a note at the bottom of a grocery list in the supermarket parking lot. And it doesn't need to be big. It can be small, and it can be fleeting, or it can stay with you for a long period. And then somehow I'll be thinking, God, I was really engaged by something. I can't remember what the heck it was, but it's, I think, living from a perspective of dying, there is so much grace in it. It just allows me to get out of bed in the morning, decide how far the neuropathy is going to climb up my legs, or maybe not at all, and take pills, feed the cats, and then just get on with the day. And I know there are family commitments and friends I have to pay attention to friendships. I think one of the things that is happening, is that living from a perspective of dying, I am allowing certain things to recede. There's a kind of curating. I can delete some things and add some things. I do some cancer patient advocacy work now as a volunteer. So maybe that goes way back to slide one, and identity changes depending on how you curate your life. Add some stuff, let some stuff go.
And that's also this sort of well lubricated movement with time, movement with reality, that you are allowing yourself to be changed. It sounds like allowing your in that way. Yeah, is that a fair statement? Yeah.
Well, it speaks to that language about fighting cancer, battling cancer. And I just haven't been able to sign on to that, but allowing oneself to be changed resonates with me. And it takes willingness. Willingness is the key. I don't have to be
Mm.
ready to change, but I have to be willing to change.
Mm.
I have to be open-minded. And sometimes the change occurs, maybe physically, illness has a trajectory. And I know I'm hitting a couple of milestones in my treatment. I've had 3 instances of disease progression. So from that standpoint, change will happen. And then psychically, I think I'm able to keep up with it. You know, I'm trying my best, but change has its
Mm.
own force. I can't impede
Mm.
it, so I go with it.
Mm. Yeah, boy, I wish we had 3 hours to spend together this morning because that makes me want to talk about grief too. But let me move us on a little bit because it's in here. Yeah. Well, here we are talking about death, and I think I've heard you over the course of our time together this morning say, refer to that there are certain people who you go walking with who are sort of in on the fuller truth that you're living with and dying with. Um, so how is there a note for the audience for us here to your own sort of how do you approach this notion? Is it open? Are you anyone who asks about are you willing to go there? How how important is it for you to talk about death for your own therapeutic sense? Do you find yourself being asked to be teaching people around you about it? Anyway, yeah, what's in here for you?
That last part of your ask, BJ, I can't think of people who know I have lung cancer who have said, well, help me understand what it's like. But having people to share with is crucial. And as it happens, 2 of my friends whom I can speak openly with, they both happen to be retired nurses, and one of whom is a cancer survivor. And when I was diagnosed, one of my friends, Jody, I said, Jody, you know I'm dying. And she said, I know. And so we were able to process. So
Mm.
there's a lot here. And you're right, BJ, it would take so long to talk about it. But I think that what it boils down to is having a few friends whom I can trust. I can say anything to these five people I'm thinking about. Steve, my husband, certainly foremost. My sis Jan. I have medical aid in dying. I have a maid, an intention to have autonomy in my death. And my hunch is that it will be in my hip pocket and I will be able to allow natural death. But these are conversations that I care about what people think. So yeah, I do need people to talk with openly. And as the slide says, practice saying goodbye. I just love the little crocheted creatures
That's so
talking
cute.
to me. That's kind of what it's like, no, let me finish what I was saying about when I'm actually dead. This is what I want to happen. But the people I can talk with openly about it and laugh about it and say, yeah, you're going to be sorry when I'm gone, whatever the theme is. And talking about death really quickly, if I can do it. My same nephew, Andrew, who is a strapping 35-year-old, was running in a Thanksgiving Day Boston, like half marathon. And he wasn't feeling well, got over to the side, passed out. 2 runners who happened to be doctors went to him. He had no pulse. He was taken to Mass General. A week later, he was diagnosed with sudden death arrhythmia, and he now has a Boston Scientific device implanted that will restart his heart. He died. He was revived. He was very fortunate. And he's been a good one for me to talk with about death, because at the age of 35, to him, what happened was an aberration, certainly an aberration, very rare condition, getting married in June now. But he has said some very interesting things to me that help me understand my own approach to death. That he said he thinks the experience was actually pleasant, that he felt kind of sad that he would miss, I don't know, miss middle age. But you need to find people to talk to, take the palliative care referral, grit your teeth and ask that brother or sister, approach family, and they'll tell you, you'll find out who has the fortitude, who has the ability to be a loving, radical listener. If you can find even a person, that's really all you need. But I think you do have to have someone that you can say, I am absolutely scared out of my mind. I don't know how I'm going to handle it. What's it going to be like? And and read A Beginner's Guide to the End, which is a really good insurance book. And it's very funny. And I mean, I hate to say it, but
I love that you do.
I've given that book to, God, everyone in my care team over a 3-year period. And it's just so helpful, seriously, to normalize it, to understand there is a sequence. It doesn't need to be an emotionally chaotic, horrible run up to the grave. It can be reasonably comfortable, and it can be loving, and you can, even find joy, certainly, day to day. Maybe not on the last day, but
maybe so.
It's workable. Yeah, and maybe so.
Yeah. And certainly talking about it, thinking about it, sharing this truth is an important ingredient one way or another. Doesn't necessarily mean talking with it about to everybody. And as you say, some folks just can't go there. But one way or another, this is a communal experience. And I'm looking at the time, darn it, boy, we have so much, there's so much in here. If you don't mind, Karen, let me just kind of propel us a little bit through
Of course.
the last couple of slides so we can get to the audience a little bit. Is there, I think you've already touched on this. Is there anything else you want to kind of layer in, or is it okay to move along?
Just say, I love this slide. I just love it. I've been in that infusion chair for hours and hours and hours. And I love the arm, like, no, wait, there's something more you need to hear. But you can move on.
Well, and this, I think I heard you reference one way or another in conversation about talking about it and sharing these experiences with others, these relational moments. I take that to sort of set us up to say autonomy is a powerful and wonderful force, but by itself is inadequate. There's a limits to what is just our own in this life. So much of it is a communal or relational experience. Is that a fair statement, or is there more you'd want to point out on this notion?
It's a fair statement. I think that autonomy is one of my values, actually. I'm a collegial person, but in terms of managing a terminal illness, I think choosing medical aid in dying, it feels like an autonomous decision, but boy, I need support for it, which I have received, thank goodness. But I love this slide because it kind of depicts, I don't know, autonomy, maybe the end. The person, I think, feminine, is holding a bird. the bird's going to get released, and
Mm.
there are angels, I think, with human faces, and who knows? I don't know what will happen
Mm.
when I die, but I can think of, holding the bird and just releasing it. And this is for me to do. I will die alone, the cutting of the thread of life. And I love the chalice, which maybe could be everything that is held in a life. And I think there's a teeny tiny ladder at the bottom of the tree.
Yeah.
I,
Isn't
I
that
haven't
awesome? Yeah.
decided what that is. But yeah, autonomy, I think is important for a couple of reasons. It's not that I get to do what I choose to do, but I think it also can be a blessing to those around me who are afraid to make decisions for me, or who think they will make the wrong decision. So autonomy is also a way of honoring people who love me. An ability to say about dying, no, no, this is my job. This is my job. Please help me. But the actual endpoint, I think I'll die in my husband's arms. I don't know. But when I exit, I'll be by myself, and and that will be fine.
And wow, beautiful. I mean, I hear you saying is, among other things here, that you're demanding or but also wanting and to participate in your own life through your own death. That is not as this is not a self-abdication where you hand yourself over. It sounds like one of the things I hear you saying is that this is your life, your death, and it is yours to participate in at the very least. Is that a am I hearing you right?
It's my responsibility, and that has been difficult to understand. And I've been able to get there, and I waver. It's like, no, I don't want to do this, but it's my responsibility, and I can do it with, I hope, with dignity and sensitivity, and love, self-love, but really primarily sending love out to everyone who's going to be left behind. And I can go really esoteric and say, well, it's not really me that's dying. You're the one who's not going to have me anymore. But I can just get nuts with it. But the self, the egolessness that's going to require me to say, okay, I'm prepared. I've had a great care team. I've got good symptom management. My loved ones are around me. I know Steve is going to be well supported, and important people in my family and my life. And so my responsibility to die, I think I hope I can handle it. I think I'll be okay, because I've worked to understand it, and I've had many, many gifts from so many people, from Mettle, from my care team, from my family, people in my world. There are just lots of gifts that I didn't know they were there.
Okay, golly, Karen. All right. I'm gonna this is so good. Yeah, and for the record, I think you're gonna be okay too. I think you are okay, my friend. It's
Yay.
funny. Leah, that was a very important phrase to Leah in our visits. Anyway, all right, okay, I'm just gonna there is this one more slide, and I think we can just say a beat on it, and then thanks everybody for your patience. There's just so much here, and then we'll finally open up here. But I guess I one of I'm so glad you hit on this. This is a meaningful notion to me, that because we talk about the trajectory of illness being one of decline oftentimes, and that's our language. And okay, I get that from a sort of physiologic point of view, but as you're showing us, pointing to, as embodying here that there's plenty in your experience that is on ascent, is in a crescendo, like we've talked, that there's something in you that's the opposite of declining, whether it's your spirit or your emotional life or your capacity for the truth. Am I hitting do you agree with me? Is
Yeah,
that right?
there's there's a concentration of emotion, I think, so that the trajectory of illness, there are patterns. I know the disease progression is predetermined. I mean, my oncologist will know what's happening. I hope I will know somewhat intuitively. But my feelings, the trajectory of illness, that's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the trajectory of my feelings, I think, will not get smaller in the sense they'll become more concentrated. So there's a kind of expansion of my heart and my emotions, while illness is going to be shutting me down. So there is a divergence, if that makes sense. And I
It
sometimes
makes great sense.
I feel that.
Mm.
That's
Well,
that cure, letting things go.
yeah. Well, that's certainly what it feels like being with you. I can say that. It is embiggening. Funny word I'm not even sure exists, but I've heard it used several times recently. Um, okay, dear Karen, thank you so much. And audience out there, thank you for your patience. Obviously, there's just a lot to talk about. So let's finally get to it. Well, obviously, we're already over. Thanks for sticking around. But Sonia, questions or anything out there to share?
Yeah, Karen, thank you so much for all the sharing. It's just beautiful to hear your reflections on everything. Evelyn said, Karen, are you doing any legacy work, writing to loved ones, writing an ethical will, recording your lovely voice and reflections? And she said, thank you so much for sharing as well.
Only incidentally am I doing legacy work. But I'm actually at a point when I'm thinking about that. I've done a lot of planning, done a lot of paperwork, as you would expect. But in terms of even funeral instructions, I think I'm allowing my life to express to loved ones, to family members. I may just let my life be its own expression of meaning. And I do a lot of writing. I've got a set of reflections that I probably will try to get them organized and share them with family. But I haven't done anything specific like writing a living will. Is that what it is? Or a living legacy? I trust my family. I think they know who I am, and my hope is that my values, to the extent that they will be of benefit, are embedded in people who love me.
That's
My hope is
beautiful.
that
So
will be-
that's beautiful. Thank you. And I think a lot of legacy work can end up feeling like something on a to-do list for people, to die, to have a good death. But I think what your point is, like, the way you live your life is its own legacy. Legacy is inherent into how you're living. So it doesn't need to be this extra thing on a to-do list for you. It's baked in to how you are,
No, I don't
and how you
want
show your life.
I don't want a performative death.
Thank you. Yeah. That's a big note. Thank you. That's really an important one for all of us who, we open these subjects to try to get to things so we don't hurt, more than we need to, and we find as much joy as we can. But if we're not careful, it can set up this idea that there's a good death, and if you don't do your homework, you're going to have a bad one. And boy, the last thing we want to do is set anyone up for a sense of failure as they head to the end. So thank you for that note. Hugely
Sure.
important. All right, Sones, what else? Anybody else? Any other
I
comments out
don't
there?
see any other hands or questions. I mean, you two
Hmm.
covered so much
Uh-oh,
good stuff.
see a
Oh, we have
hand.
a hand. I see a
Yeah.
hand. Shelley, you may have to unmute on your side, Shelley.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I didn't want to
Shelley.
miss my opportunity. Karen, my gosh, thank you so much. This is my first ever webinar with you all. I'm a nurse practitioner at UCSF in the breast center, and I'm so passionate about just the humanness of illness. And my gosh, it's just really an honor, Karen. Thank you. And thank you, BJ. I guess my question is, um, is there anything that, I know this is so broad, is there just anything, Karen, that, I don't know, you would want other people going through a cancer diagnosis, whether it's quote terminal or treatable or curable, just to kind of, I'm always interested in how can we help shepherd each other to have more of that perspective that you have, which is, dying while living, living while dying. I see so much fear of recurrence in the people I help. And then I hear your perspective, and I wish that for everyone. I know it's not in everyone's path, but just, I don't know if there was a book or a turning point, or obviously BJ's work that just you would gently recommend to someone to kind of bring them closer to that more peaceful perspective, is how I feel it from you. Thank you so much.
Oh, Shelley, thank you. Meet people where they are. I think take the palliative care referral early. Reading is good. I think it's hard to do a deep dive into education. It's hard to begin reading books on death and dying and to sort out your thinking. So I believe that telling or assuring people that they're safe, however you can understand them, however that is telegraphed to you. I think whomever is before me, that's the first thing, is to feel safe, because what is death? It's the ultimate unsafe. So
Right.
Dartmouth Cancer Center, whenever I'm there, I sit at the reception area and I look around, and I'm an introvert. I'm social, but I'm basically an introvert. But if I see someone who looks like they're out of their mind with sadness, I will speak. I'll say good morning and just see what happens. And I think that the thing I've learned is that ask, engage. And I think we're so afraid that we're going to make something go wrong, or we're going to do the wrong thing. But what I've learned is that when we're working with people who are very sick, something has already gone wrong. You're not going to make things worse by being kind. I guess people respond to kindness and safety. I hope I'm getting your question, Shelley. I'm a little afield.
Yeah, no, and just that word of safety, I think that's what people say feels ripped from them when I give them bad news, right? I give bad news on a regular basis. So it's that holding both. No, thank you. And just again, this whole hour feels very sacred, and I will take these pearls in my practice. So thank you both.
Thank you, Shelley. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you, Shelley. It's lovely to hear.
Mm.
Well, Karen, we love the stuffing out of you. Thank you so much for doing this with us. Folks, as ever, we'll put this out on YouTube, and we'll share what resources we do have. And Yeah, obviously, Karen, we're going to stay in touch. But boy, thank you so, so much for being here, and to Steve indirectly, and for all the people who love you directly and support you. We love them too. So anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you, Karen.
You, BJ.
Yeah.
Deep thanks.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you everyone for being here with us. Wishing everyone a restful weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.